Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Connecticut Humanities Grant Funding for Main Street Projects. My name is Kristen Lopez. I am the Education and Training Director here at Connecticut Main Street Center. And before we get into this presentation with Connecticut Humanities on funding and what could work for your Main Street, just a few words. Connecticut Main Street Center is the expert resource for developing and sustaining vibrant downtowns and main streets that fuel our state's prosperity. We all know what a great town feels like when we see it. It's an energy that we can sense, see, experience, but sometimes it can be hard to articulate what exactly makes a main street great. And so we've broken it down into 6 qualities to make it easier to grasp. 1, behind every great downtown, there's always a dedicated Main Street management model. The Main Street is connected by multiple modes of transportation for people to access. It's welcoming, friendly, and inclusive. There are sustainable practices in place that bring life and vibrancy for today and for the future. Small businesses are encouraged and supported, as well as big development investment. And there is a unique sense of place. And so it is our mission at Connecticut Main Street Center to assess, educate, and convene around these qualities of a vibrant downtown so that main streets all across our beautiful state can develop, grow, and prosper. We are very grateful to our sponsors and funding partners that make this work possible. Connecticut Main Street founding sponsors are Eversource and the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development. Additional funding also comes from Webster Bank, Travelers, and Liberty Bank. Some quick housekeeping notes. This will be about an hour long, but we really encourage you to be active in the chat, get in all your questions as we go, and we'll make sure that they get answered at the end of the presentation. And when you exit this webinar, you'll be directed to an evaluation. Please complete that. It's very important for us to continue to make meaningful educational programs for you. And so with that, I am super excited to bring up the Connecticut Humanities grant team, Scott and Leanne, to tell us more about the great funding opportunities that Connecticut Humanities has to offer. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you guys are good to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen, and thanks to everyone at Connecticut Main Street for inviting us to speak with you and all your members today. My name is Scott Wands. I am Deputy Director for Grants and Programs at Connecticut Humanities.
And I'm Leanne Partridge. I'm the Grants Manager at Connecticut Humanities.
And we are a team of 3, so although she's not here today, I want to make sure we talk about Becky Vitkoskis, who is our Grants Assistant as well. So if you are talking to us, and we do hope a number of you will get in touch with us afterwards to talk to us about some projects that you might want to have us consider for funding, you're going to be talking to some combination of Leanne, Becky, or myself. We want to make sure we leave some ample time for questions and answers for you all at the end, but because we're in the same room today, if you guys can put your questions in the chat, we will go through and answer those afterwards. And we're not going to talk the full hour. We're going to talk for hopefully about 35 to 40 minutes here. But we want to give a good overview of what Connecticut Humanities is, what kinds of things we fund and are prioritizing, and what things might be coming in the future that you all would like to be thinking about and aware of. And I do think a lot of what we do at Connecticut Humanities connects to the priorities and the goals that Kristen was talking about for what makes a successful and great Main Street. So I'll try to tie into some of those as well with our talk. But many of you might not know what Connecticut Humanities is or what a State Humanities Council, which is what we are, does. I think a lot more folks are familiar with the arts in a state, in the State Office of the Arts. In many ways, the humanities and the arts are siblings. Back in the 1960s, we formed a National Endowment for the Arts and a National Endowment for the Humanities, and we started state organizations to do work on behalf of the federal agencies at the state level. So many of you might work with Liz Shapiro and her team at the Connecticut Office of the Arts. We are different from them. They are a state agency. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, but we both do the same kind of work. Liz in Office of the Arts for the NEA, and us here at Connecticut Humanities, located out of Middletown, for the National Endowment for the Humanities. We've been around for 50 years. Actually, 2024 is our 50th birthday. So you might see some celebration and kind of fun stuff coming up over the next year about that. And really what we do at the Humanities, and we'll share a screen and go into what the Humanities more are, but they help us interpret who we are as a people, the world around us, where we've been, what's the issues facing us today, and where we might be going tomorrow. We do a number of different activities. We're going to talk more about the granting side of things, but we have digital resources, ConnecticutHistory.org and Teach It CT, which help tell our state's history and bring it to the public. ConnecticutHistory.org is more of an encyclopedia. Teach It is resources to bring to the classroom. We are the Center for the Book for Connecticut and support literature. But by and large, we are doing a lot of the things that the Office of the Arts does, but for the humanities. So let me share a screen, and I'm gonna, with Leanne, take you through a couple different websites. We don't have a mouse pad, so we're trying to navigate the conference room mouse without a mouse pad. All right. Back. All right. If you go to cthumanities.org, you will be on our website. I'm going to minimize things so I can see my screen a little bit more than all of you right now. All right. And there's a couple different sections I want to highlight. About us, you'll learn more about who we are at Connecticut Humanities, who our staff is, all that fun stuff. Newsroom, you can get our most recent updates. You can subscribe to our e-newsletter, and we have several different versions of it that go out, from history to grants. Hope at the end, if you're not already subscribed to our grants newsletter, that might be something you're considering doing. We'll get into the grants section. Our work, you can get into more of those digital humanities platforms I was talking about, or some of the other programs we do, like Center for the Book or Book Voyagers, which is a program to get children involved with literature. And we do have an events calendar. So I do encourage you, if you have humanities events that are happening at your institutions or on your main streets, you can become a contributor and submit those events to our calendar. But again, we're going to highlight and talk mostly about grants and sponsorships. But even before I do that, we were talking about what are the humanities. You can see under advocacy, there's a link for what are the humanities here. And just want to talk a little bit about that, because it's different. People understand the arts, but the way I like to think about the difference between the arts and the humanities is the arts is doing, it's active, it's a presentation or a performance. And the humanities are really looking at that human experience, the ways we can contextualize and understand who we are, the human condition, the things that connect us as a people and our history and our future. Scrolling down on this website a little bit here, there are a number of different disciplines that the humanities incorporate. Things like history or sociology, political science, philosophy. We would be able to fund through our grant lines many of these different aspects. I don't think you have to memorize the list here. It's just knowing that, you know, whereas a performance is something you would enjoy and see, when you have that moment to reflect on something, whether it be through writing, on a website, in person, and be able to think about the world, what it's meant, those get into the kind of things that we fund and we'll get more into. So we don't fund main stage performances at a theater or concerts, but when a main stage production wants to get into the issues that that play or that musical raises and have discussions with the audience before or after, that's where some of the kinds of things we can be funding that we'll be talking about today. In terms of general eligibility here, if you have a main street that is a 501c3, you would be eligible to come to us directly. Municipalities can come to us directly, and a number of the nonprofit 501c3s that make up your main streets themselves are eligible to apply and have done. You know, just looking at this slide that Kristen was showing, the Warner Theater, for example, comes to us periodically for some of the humanities activities that they do. And many of your entities could come into us at the same time. So you can't come in for a bunch of grants in the same grant line, but let's say we're talking about some of our smaller implementation grants, quick grants, which we're going to get into, multiple entities that are eligible on your main streets and the main street itself, if eligible, could come to us for quick grants at the same deadline. If you click on grants and sponsorships at the top of our grants page, There's a lot of information which we'll highlight and go through a little bit here and encourage you to go back and look at it a little bit more deeply. It's overview of the grants, the process, the grant lines that are currently accepting applications. You can see what some of the prior grant lines are, or ones that are not currently accepting applications, but we hope will come back in the near future. And again, I won't talk a lot about this, but many of you may have heard about the CT Summer at the Museum program that ran the last couple summers, 3 years in a row. That's a program that the governor created that was administered through the Department of Economic and Community Development. And we did a lot of the grant making in partnership with the Office of the Arts and administered the nonprofit grants. So again, if that grant line comes back and the governor funds it again this year, it'll move back up the list of things here. We also have a toolkit for resources that will help you not just to be successful with grants for us or to find funding sources, but to be successful in grants in general to other state agencies, foundations, or hopefully the federal government as well. Let me click on the overview of the grants and just highlight a couple of things there. This gives a little bit of background about who we are, but I also want to highlight we have a handy matrix that Leanne created to help you try to figure out quickly what's the right grant line for your project. And we're going to talk more about each of these. But for example, quick grants, some of the types of projects that they fund. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are the types of things we often see. The award size and amount. And you'll notice that quick grants cut off at $49.99. That's not to make everyone frustrated out there, but we are funded and we are re-granting out state of Connecticut funds on behalf of the Connecticut State Legislature. And our funding language says that implementation grants of less than $5,000 do not require you to do fundraising and have an external match. So we've got a grant line that does not require you to do additional fundraising beyond your own funds. Deadlines, quick grants happen 4 times a year. When those deadlines are and when you find out. In the case of quick grants, the whole process happens within a month. So we have a deadline coming up in February. Those grants are due the first Friday of the month, always the first Friday, and people will know about their decision and their status by the end of the month. We also offer planning opportunities to prep for implementation projects. Implementation grants pick up where the quick grants leave off and go from 5 up to 35,000. Capacity grants, these are not projects you're doing for the public, but it's to strengthen you as an organization behind the scenes, often with consultant-led activities to be able to provide more, stronger, better humanities programs in the future. And sponsorships. We have these in a separate bucket because they're a little bit different. The other grant lines, we're really evaluating the project that you're doing, the content that you're going to be delivering to the public. Sponsorships are a little bit more about visibility and opportunities to serve areas of the state or parts of the humanities that we're not serving otherwise. I think looking at my list here of things, let's go into the highlight of the oh, I'm looking for the yeah, thank you. There it is. So let's talk just a little bit about the funding priorities here. So overarching all of our grant lines that we were just talking about, we are looking for projects to do a few different things. We are wanting projects that include significant humanities scholarship and content. And by that, we mean if you're doing a lecture series, we want to make sure that you have the right people that are going to be presenting the material. If you're having a panel talk, a group of people that are experts, whether they're having PhD after the name or they are using their lived experiences to be able to help us understand the topics and the themes and the issues that you want to discuss with your audiences. We always want any of the projects we fund in any grant line or type to be exploring stories in an inclusive, diverse, and equitable manner, bringing in multiple voices, talking about things in terms of where we are today and in current scholarship. And we are at Connecticut Humanities, and I'll talk more about this later, the administrative arm of the state's 250th anniversary commission. Many of you may have heard or be aware or already be following in 2026, We are celebrating the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and there are state commissions forming all across the country to help states and main streets be able to navigate what this moment means, not just what happened 250 years ago, but who we are as a nation, the issues that are facing us today, and where we might want to be going in the next 250 years. And I will go to the 250th website a little bit later, where you can see some of the guiding themes and the priorities that the commission is hoping that states, towns, communities, organizations, main streets will be exploring as we approach July 4th of 26 and beyond. In addition to that, we give priority to the following bullet points. You do not need to do all of these to have a successful application. In fact, please do not try to say that your project does every single one of these. But again, if you can be having good, strong scholarship, looking at your topic inclusively, even better tying to the 250th and doing one or more of the below, it will increase your ability to be a successful project and raise your score with our review committee. We want to be talking about the issues that are facing us today. We want to encourage places to do things that are creative and innovative. Not to say we won't fund the types of things that places have done for many years, but we want to encourage places to think outside the box and try some new things. We'd love it if the things that we fund, the public after they leave it have been challenged or inspired or know more about the content that has been presented. We'd love it if the things that we fund don't just time out when the grant is done and the project is over and they have legs beyond the length of the grant. We always are encouraging places to collaborate and partner. We will fund one organization's projects, but again, if a community gets together, and Ridgefield is a good example of this, they come to us frequently for projects that will be town-wide, linking the Historical Society, the library, Keeler Tavern Museum, the Aldrich, encouraging traffic and people to go up and down their main drag in Ridgefield. That's a priority for us and helps to raise the score in a grant review. That's you. Right? That's managing it. I'm trying to get to the timeline of a grant. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Last thing I want to say before we get into some of the grant lines themselves is just quickly what happens when you submit a grant here at Connecticut Humanities. We have a handy page that tells you through the process of things. And what the first steps would be after today, if you have some ideas for grants, reach out to our grant staff. We have a general email, grants@cthumanities.org, where Leanne, Becky, and I can all see emails and respond to you. Yes, you can email us individually, but you will have a much more quick response if you email the grants team as a whole. We will talk to you about your project, see if it sounds like a good fit. If it does, we will set up a consultation and do like a Zoom meeting with you all to learn more about it, answer any questions you have, match up to the right grant line and schedule for the project you have. We encourage you as you work on a draft of your application to be targeting for small grants, like quick grants, a week out of the deadline, for bigger grants, 2 weeks out, and have a draft saved in our online grants portal. We as a grants team will go in and then do a draft review, look at it, give feedback, see if everything is lining up, if we've got some suggestions, anything that would help you have a stronger success when you reach our committee review. And then you submit. And we want to highlight here, it's not a mysterious process. We have transparency about how we review things. Want to say that the staff that you're talking to, Leanne, Becky, nor I, will be the ones that are adjudicating your grants or reviewing them. We're more the shepherds or the tennis referees. We will be submitting grants to what's known as our application review committee. It's made up of board members, outside committee advisors, and for quick grants and sponsorships, staff members, but again, not our grants team staff. And all of the projects will be reviewed about the content, the scholarship, how it meets our funding priorities, and its overall viability as a project. We will, as a grants team and staff, be making sure that It doesn't have some things that can't cause it to go on to committee if it's missing a budget, if it's using a budget that's not on our required form. There are a number of different things here to be aware of, things submitted after an application deadline is passed. We do adhere to ethical standards here. Our teams need to be recusing themselves if they have any conflicts of interest, if they're submitting grant applications in a round, because again, we have outside reviewers, they're not allowed to participate in that particular review. We have a matrix that we go through and to be reviewing the grants to match up to the questions that you are being asked. And when those grants are funded, we will then be notifying organizations if they were successful or if they were declined. If they were declined, we'll give some feedback to help you out and find out what the reasons were for the committee so that you could be successful either with us or in future submissions for that project. If you are awarded, won't go through this at depth, but you can see the life cycle here, how you receive payment, the kind of things we'd be asking for, including final reports. And if you want to see more about our granting program, we do periodic evaluations of it and share the findings. We listen to our grantees, those that get us, those that did not get funding, so that we could be having a program that is always better tomorrow than it was yesterday. I'm going to pass it to Leanne now so we can talk a couple grant lines, and then we'll be getting to you in Q&A in a couple of moments.
Great. So I'm going to talk through our two smallest funding opportunities, which are sponsorships and quick grants. I do also want to highlight that we have resources for applicants available as well, and it is also linked on each of the grant application or the grant web pages. And these resources include a lot of FAQs. It includes help with the application itself. And one thing I wanted to highlight is, as Scott was mentioning, we are striving for transparency, and we do have the scoring criteria directly on this page as well. So nothing is really a secret. These are all things that you can take a look at when you get a chance. So I'm going to start by talking about sponsorships, and sponsorships, like Scott said, are a little bit different. Sponsorships are technically not a grant. The idea behind them is an exchange of funds for CTH visibility, and we're looking to sponsor public humanities events. These are sponsorships of up to $2,000. You can request more, and that's something we could discuss if you have a project that you would like to discuss with us. But the recommendation is requesting up to $2,000. There's no match because this is, like I said, an exchange of funds for CTH visibility. And the idea behind these are that they would fund a public humanities event that ideally targets either a large audience or an audience that is largely underserved within the humanities. You'll see on each of our web pages for our sponsorships and grants that there will be more information about what we're seeking to fund with this line. The guidelines and applications, so we definitely recommend reviewing the guidelines before submitting an application. And then you'll also see a PDF preview of the application as well. The funding priorities for sponsorships are different than the funding priorities for our grants. Like I said, the sponsorships are different because they're technically not a grant. And so what we're looking for with the sponsorship are what's highlighted in these bullet points here. As with the other funding priorities, you certainly don't need to hit every single one of these. These are just ideas that the committee has come up with for what they're hoping to fund through the sponsorship. One question we often get is what is considered a large number of attendees or viewership? And that really depends on your organization. We're looking for something that is large for you. So that's something we can discuss when you have an idea and you reach out to us and we can see what might be the best fit for your project. Projects should be free or low cost to attend, and that applies across the board for everything that we fund. One possibility with sponsorships that's largely not available through our grants is something that's a professional development opportunity for a humanities serving institution. Our grants are really intended for the public only, And this is the one line that we have that might be available for professional development. Underserved areas of the humanities, and that is a pretty broad topic, so that's certainly something we can discuss. And then we're also looking to fund organizations that are not recently funded through us. So if you're new to us, this is a really great line. This resources takes you to that page I had just showed with the resources. And then the important dates on every page is going to show you the application deadlines that are coming up, give you some information about the timeline as well. Each page will show you, how to apply, have some FAQs and resources if you've received a sponsorship. I'm going to now talk about our quick grants, and if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and we can pause for questions as well. Otherwise, we can answer questions at the end. So quick grants are our smallest grant. And as Scott had highlighted before, they go up to just under $5,000. They're $4,999, and they're intended for small-scale humanities activities like discussion-based public programs, exhibitions, and tours. By no means an exhaustive list, but it must be a public humanities activity. These must be open to the general public, free or low cost to attend, and must clearly be interpretive and based in the humanities. So we have some sample grant applications here, and if you're thinking, I'm not sure if my project is really a fit, it might be helpful to look at some samples to get some ideas. Let's say you had an idea for a tour and you want to see what's been funded as a tour. These are just some highlights of tours that we funded that we think these are really model applications.
And I would just stop right there for a second, Leanne. One thing here, the tours can be indoors, they can be outdoors, and two of those bullet points I think are important things to be thinking about for Main Streets. New London landmarks, outside walking tours that had some virtual components to help connect content and stories for different neighborhoods across New London, or town of Wethersfield, outdoor permanent site signage up and down Main Street in downtown Old Wethersfield that help people that are going from the ice cream shop down to the Charles restaurant learn about the history and the culture in the buildings that they're walking down. So these are types of things that might be interest to the people on this Zoom today.
The quick grant, as with all of our grants, is a matching grant. It is required to have a one-to-one match. But the match can come from any combination of external cash, your organization's cash, or in-kind contributions. We do have a more detailed description of what matching funds means. It should be on the resources page and also in the FAQs for each of the web pages. But if you have any questions about that, we can certainly discuss now. But for now, I will pass it over to Scott to talk about some of our major grants.
And I'm going to do this briefly here. I think in general, if you're an organization that has not come to us before, Liam, Becky, and I will probably be encouraging you to be thinking about a sponsorship or a quick grant. They're a good entry point. Grants introduce you to the committee, simpler applications, quicker turnaround and timeline. But I want you to be aware of some of the larger grant lines that we have as well. All right, so I'm going to talk about planning and implementation first, and then I'll get to capacity quickly. So, and I'll go in reverse order. Implementation picks up where quick grants leave off. So if you've got a bigger ask, that $5,000 to $35,000 range, these are the types of projects that we're looking for implementation grants. Same kind of format on these pages, so I won't go over all the things that Leanne just said. But again, I do encourage you to look at some of the sample grants here. What are the types of things that are funded through this grant line? It ends up being bigger things, bigger exhibits, the kind of activities that are coming to your art institution on a annual basis or quarterly basis. We are still doing discussion-based programs, but whereas in the previous grant line, it might be an author talk for an hour or a smaller lecture series. These get into bigger discussions, maybe bringing in bigger cost speakers like the Connecticut Forum for a forum they did a few years ago on immigration, or the Hillstead Museum and their annual Sunken Garden Poetry Festival from a few years ago. We do online projects as well. Again, these don't all need to be in person. So if you are doing something like the Mystic Seaport Museum and developing an educational component on their website, helping people understand Connecticut's indigenous whaling community, that could be the kind of grant line for that. And we do fund and support documentary films, both at the time where they're ready to start showing it to the public, which is where implementation grants come in, and at planning grants if you're in the filming and not ready to show yet, which we'll talk about in a moment. The last thing I want to talk about here, all the grant lines I'm going to talk about, planning, implementation, and capacity, they have the same deadline schedule. These are offered twice a year, November and April, always again on the first Friday of the month. And these have a 2 to 3 month turnaround based on when our board is meeting here. So those November grants that just came in this past fall, everyone found out about their status right before Christmas. The grants have different open periods. Quick grants are for a year. Implementation grants can be up to 2 years worth of time of projects. So those grants that we just funded in November, for example, it's stuff that could be happening in 2024 or all the way through really 2025, a longer runway to do those projects. Planning. Yes.
Sorry, just while you're talking about that, we had one question that came through. Can you clarify what you mean by interpretive digital media projects?
Right. So if you're an organization that wants to just refresh your website to be able to give it a new look and have the information about your open hours or how the visitor finds you, that's not the kind of stuff we're looking for. We're looking for content to be shared for school children, for the public. It could be a virtual exhibit. It could be videos that you want to be putting out there to help people understand some aspect of your community. So I think it's, again, if you're getting into the humanities, you're helping us understand our world around us, the issues that we're facing in a digital online format. There's not one thing it has to be, but that's what we'd be looking for you to be doing on your website, and getting people to understand some topic, theme, issue a little bit better, having gone to that part of your site.
Thank you.
Planning grants, just briefly, if you're not ready to come in for a quick grant, or you're not ready to come in for an implementation grant, and you need to do research and consultant work to get the design ready, let's say we're still talking about interpretive web content here. You want to do an online video series, but you haven't done all your research. You haven't finalized what the video format is going to be, the look, the wireframes of your website. That's the kind of work you could do in a planning process. You can get funding for up to 18 months to go to other places, investigate their projects, go to libraries or archives and do the research to get the footage that you need for a documentary that will be edited into the final format later on, to be hiring someone to be coming up with the graphic identity, the marketing plan. You're not doing the marketing, but you are coming up with the ways of reaching the audiences that you are looking for. Maybe it's to get feedback. You want to do some surveying or focus groups to be able to get information from the people that you want to go to your program in the future. And you need to get the information from them as you are mapping out the curriculum that you're putting together for the teachers. You want to be talking to the teachers and making sure that it connects to their the needs that they have for the classroom. We have more samples here. And again, it's a lot of the same formats you're going to see, but you will see what the activities that happen at a planning stage are. So for exhibits, the work that Greenwich Historical Society put into getting ready to put on the exhibit that just closed at the end of 2023 about sports, or for curriculum development, like I was just talking about, how the Gilder Lehrman Center out of Yale was doing work and getting feedback from educators to be able to help create PD for our new state's mandates about teaching African American Latino studies. Again, same deadline dates of the first Friday of November and April. And there are, like I said, are an 18-month window for the activities that you could be doing. And finally, capacity grants. Again, I mentioned earlier, these are a little bit different in that you're not doing something for the public here, but you are getting a consultant in maybe to do strategic planning or to do an audience assessment or a marketing plan, not for a specific humanities project, but for your organization, so that you could be designing and doing stronger humanities programs for the next few years. For organizations to be successful here, you need to be talking about the way that you serve the humanities currently and your programming for the humanities, or that you're hoping to do more and better after doing something like inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility planning or training, or having a technological assessment of your organization's website, so that you could be better serving and putting content out there in the future. With that, I think, and especially looking at the time, I'm going to stop sharing screen right now. If I can get my mouse to there. I'm so close, it like bounces. All right. And then I want to turn it over. Kristen, I know you've been looking at the chat here. If there are some questions that have been out there that we want to start off with and to get feedback, and I can give some more examples of other projects and things that have come up that might be good fits for Main Streets and our grant lines.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. I think that was a really great overview, and I hope that our audience is thinking of a lot of cool things that they could be doing to activate their main streets. We don't have any new questions in the chat right now, so I'm just gonna wait for more questions to come through. I just wanted to kind of underline a couple of things that you said to make sure everyone heard. You had mentioned that if you haven't applied to you guys before, the sponsorship and quick grants is the best path forward. And
often that would be a recommendation from us, not to discourage places from coming in, but not just for us, but just in general, if you're looking at a new funder for you, getting your feet wet, doing a smaller project, showing successes are going to help you build that rapport and familiarity with the funder and lead to better success with bigger grant lines in the future.
And even for that size of grant, do you still recommend that people reach out to the grants team?
Actually, we require a conversation with us, some sort of back and forth, whether it just be over email or ideally having an opportunity to have a grant consultation in person, virtually. This is not to create an additional hurdle for people to do. It's we really want you all to not get frustrated, to make sure that this projects you're thinking about are good fits, that you're looking at the right deadline, that you're on the right schedule, so that you're having the most high likelihood of success, and then we in turn get to our reviewers the highest caliber project. That's our whole goal here, because we know it takes a lot of time to put together an application. As much as we continue to try to streamline and refine and make sure we're only asking the things we need, any grant application you take takes time, and we don't want that time to be misdirected.
Yeah, it's great. And it's a great opportunity. We have a couple questions coming in now. This is from Lauren from Bridgeport Downtown Special Services District. Is there any hope on the horizon for the CT Cultural Fund to return or something similar to it? Those funds really helped us to offer cultural programming that wasn't quite right for other grant programs.
So I will give the latest on advocacy and things. We are working hard. Our director, Dr. Jason Mancini, is working with our partners in the arts and Brett Thompson at the Arts Alliance and Frank at the tourism to be able to get this funding back as soon as possible. It was funded in the biennium budget that ended in June of last year. For 2 years, we had $30.7 million, 80% of which went out in operating support, leading to over 700 operating support grants made in the second year. It was not funded in the current biennium. We are hearing very positive things from the legislature about wanting us to continue to advocate for this. It's just a matter of getting the right pathway funding source through both the legislative and executive checks on our budget. So we will keep working on that. We will be letting you all know when the right time is and how you can be helping. I think just in general now, if you are someone that got funding, what we're going to be continuing to say is make good relationships with your state reps and your state senators. Let them know about the work you do. Let them know about the funding that you get from state sources that helps you do that. So then when there is an ask, it is the right time to really do a full court press that they already know you, they have a relationship with you, and they're not hearing from you for the first time.
That's great. Couple more questions. Mary from Thomaston. Are grants considered for publications that highlight historic areas of a community as well as points of interest? Example would be a street map to share tourists and groups that come to a historic community.
So publications are a thing. If we're talking more books, right now, we do not fund the printing of books. We can fund the research that leads into books, and that would lead into many other humanities projects, because again, you do all that research and the content there, it becomes talks, it becomes something you might want to video. When it's smaller types of publications, like you're talking about pamphlets or maps, the answer is yes. But again, you're going to be wanting to talk about what people are learning through that, the kind of content that's going to be included there, or that you'll be driving people to somewhere else to learn more. So I think we could be talking about that as if you've got some ideas of ways that you want to be help people learn about the content in your community through a smaller publication that's not a full-blown book.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Suffield has an art project which includes several organizations within town scheduled for April 2024. Would there be an opportunity to apply for a grant prior to this event? Is there any flexibility in the grant application timeframe?
So there is not really flexibility with the grant application timeframe. Our deadlines are fixed, and it's because of when our board meets. But we do have sponsorships and quick grants that are offered 4 times a year. So the dates that Scott highlighted are for our larger grants. So April, November is for capacity planning and implementation. Sponsorships and quick grants are offered 4 times a year. Quick grants are February, May, August, and November. And sponsorships are March, June, September, and December. So again, the dates on the website, so you don't have to just scribble them down. But if you're looking at an April event, if it is later in April, I would say a February quick grant or a March sponsorship could work for that. If it's earlier in April, then only the February quick grant. And we should also talk about the project, because if it is primarily an arts project, it's probably not the best fit for us. But if there's interpretive and contextualizing elements that make it a little more of a humanities project, or if there's a strong humanities element, then there could certainly be a fit there, and we could discuss looking at either the February or March deadline.
Yeah, and knowing Suffield, I mean, I think there might be parts of the things that some organizations are doing that wouldn't be good fits, and parts that some organizations are doing that might be. So if the Phelps Hathaway House is getting involved, or the King House, and they're doing more history-based content things, or the library is having talks or opportunities to get into reflection more than just art walks, then yeah, I think again, maybe there's more arts things at some places and more humanities activities at other places.
Excellent. Before we get to the closing of our time, I would love for you just go back to the America's 250th, and because this is a great time to start planning some activities for your Main Street. And so we can hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. I'm gonna go back to sharing screen here. I think I am. Here we go. And I'm gonna take us to the 250th website, which I can't see the top nav. There we go. Under our work, we get into I think it's a 250th here, is it not there? Not like defining priorities. We'll go that way. All right. Maybe. Okay. I'm gonna have Leanne do it because I cannot get this mouse to work here. But I'll talk about the 250th here. So the 250th Commission was formed about a year and a half ago now. We're actually finishing our first annual report now that we've completed a full years of activities. And it is comprised of people from state government, like the state library, the Office of the Arts, tourism. We're going to be looking for funding, and we are working on getting funding right now to be able to help places and communities and towns look at the 250th in inclusive, diverse ways that, yes, we will be having fireworks and parades and things, but we really want to help us think more reflectively about who we are as a nation, what is happening, and that's where these themes that are on the screen right now. And thank you for putting that in the chat, Leanne. So we're hoping that we will help us tell inclusive stories and look at the full peoples of Connecticut, how we got here, you know, not just those communities that were involved in the 1700s, but the immigration, the indigenous populations, the full breadth and depth of who we have been and who we are going to be as a state and a nation. Place using our communities as driving forces, 169 cities and towns, the stories that they can tell, the industry, the reasons that people have come here, the museums, the community centers, the main streets that we have. We want people to understand how we do good history and how we tell good stories in today's time, and for a common good. We want this to be a civics exercise that is getting people more connected to us as a people, our founding documents, the ideals that our founding fathers and mothers had in trying to inspire action and shape our democracy and where we want to be going in the future. We have been bringing in a couple of funding sources. We actually have some exciting ones that we'll be announcing within the next few weeks here. The state has not put in a lot of money yet, jealous of some of the other states like New Jersey and Ohio that have been well funded. We want this to lead to opportunities for communities, main streets, organizations to take these ideas and bring it to their communities. Have artists be inspired to create art about democracy. It doesn't require necessarily creating a whole new slate of things. I live in Wethersfield. I'm involved in our Heritage Commission in town. We're having conversations about taking existing opportunities like scarecrows and bicycles on Main and use the themes that would be happening in and around the 250th to be reflections of liberty and justice and democracy, to be having photo contests that happen annually, be having themes that year of having people create the photography that will tie into it. So I think there are ways that you can create new things, but use existing to tie into it. To get involved, it does have its own ways of signing up for communications or to indicate that you want to be volunteering and helping the 250th Commission in the state do things. And there is an event section which will continue to grow and become more robust, especially as we work towards 2026. We're still at that stage where I think a lot of places are trying to figure out what their rules are, and the commission will be continually doing programs and activities to help you get there. One example coming up in March at the Central Connecticut State University, the commission, along with CCSU and a couple other groups, are putting on a 4-day symposium from Wednesday, March 13th through Saturday, the 16th. And promotion for this will start soon. The first 2 days to help schools and educators connect to the 250th. The third day on the Friday will be programming from the commission itself, and the Saturday will be from the Association for the Study of Connecticut History, helping nonprofits and cultural organizations really start to think about what their role could be for the 250th.
Excellent, thank you for that, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot more about this initiative coming through, but like I said, this is a great time to start thinking about how you can really put together some really great activations, whether that's something new or, as Scott said, kind of build upon what already exists in your community. We have time for more questions if people have questions. We did get one more through the chat. Can you clarify external funds? Would funds donated and held by our library board be considered external funds?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about what the matching funds mean. So when you request funds for one of our grants, you're requesting during the grant period. And so the matching funds must also be funds that are used to match that grant during the grant period as well. So there are 3 different types of matching funds. There's external, there's the applicant cash, and there's also in-kind contributions. I'll work up to the external funds. So the in-kind contributions are any donated goods or services. It could include volunteer time, which we're currently recommending at $31 an hour. It could include donated space. So for example, if there was a venue that would typically charge you $1,000, but they're waiving that fee, that's your in-kind contribution. It includes applicant cash, and applicant cash is your own organization's funds. So let's say you have a salaried person who is working on this project. The amount of time that they're working on this project is part of your cash contribution. Right? It could also be if your organization is paying for that venue or paying for equipment, supplies, that type of thing. And then external funds, getting to the question, are funds that are sourced from outside of your organization. So they are typically other grants or donations specifically to that project that are then used on that project during the grant period. So if your board is donating those funds, I typically think we don't consider that outside.
If your board can be making, if you have a board member that is writing $1,000 check for that exhibit, that's got to be for the exhibit, not for your annual fund, it does qualify. I think that's the big thing is your annual fund contributions overall don't count. It's got to be fundraising for that specific project. In that case, as long as it's not an interested party like the director writing a check to meet the needs, it can be your board and your past board or outside funders like Eversource or the local bank.
Excellent, thank you.
I want to highlight just a couple, because we talked about projects a little bit, but just the type of things. I think in general, if you are a Main Street and you have eligible 501c3 nonprofits that are up and down your Main Street or a municipal library, we'd love to make sure that you know that they are eligible to come to us if they're not already. But you, again, as a Main Street, could be doing things that connect your service area. So tours, like I was talking about with New London Landmarks, opportunities to get out and traverse an area of the Main Street you represent, encouraging people to get to businesses. It could be more history-based content. It could be talking about things to come in your community. But again, when you want to get into issues and themes and use your Main Street as a way to help us better understand the world and the issues we're facing, it could be like I was talking about with Wethersfield, where you're doing interpretive sciences that are out there for people to see. It could be creating some of that stuff in a digital realm to be able to connect to your sites. It can be talks. Again, you want to bring people out to do an author talk at the library, and you're using that as an opportunity to get out and have people do dinner before or after. It could be getting into online content that you want to be building out on your Main Street website so people will understand the geography, the history, stories of the place that you are telling. These are the kind of things that we could be talking to you about for potential grants.
Excellent, thank you. And the first step, of course, is to reach out to the Connecticut Humanities grant team to talk about your project. Thank you so much, Scott Leanne, for your time today for this presentation. Definitely gave us a lot to think about. I hope it was very beneficial for our attendees. And with that, I just have a few closing remarks I'd like to leave you with. And that is Connecticut Main Street Center. We are a network-based organization, and we invite you guys to join our growing community of 80+ communities, Main Streets, municipalities around the state who are really committed to improving their Main Street. Please keep look at our events calendar at ctmainstreet.org/events for upcoming opportunities that we have. In February, we have a webinar on funding Main Street management, 3 models. And so we're going to be looking at business improvement districts, 501c3 nonprofits, and also TIF districts. We'll be hearing from 3 different presenters talking about kind of the pros and cons of each model. So if you don't have a dedicated management model or are looking for a funding mechanism, this will be a really excellent webinar for you to attend. And our registration is now open for our next in-person summit at the Goodwin Hotel in Hartford in March. And we will be talking about Main Street Blight and Vacancy, presented by Liberty Bank. So please visit our events page, ctmainstreet.org/events, to learn more and to register. Early bird pricing is available until February 9th. Thank you again to our wonderful presenters from Connecticut Humanities, and thank you to our program partners and our funders who make our work possible. Again, when you exit this webinar, you'll have a chance to complete our webinar evaluation. Please take a moment. It really helps us create valuable programming for you. With that, have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.